So let's get started. So hi, everyone. So again, I'm Divya Apte. So today we'll talk about a little bit about artificial intelligence in customer success. Now, these are the topics that I just wanted to quickly cover. So it's funny when I have these discussions with a lot of CS professionals pretty much every week, everyone really wants to know what's the reason behind why AI is on everyone's lips nowadays, right? What is it that kind of brought us here? And so as I was mentioning a little bit ago, AI actually started back in the 1950s. And when I mentioned that to people, they're like, really? Because everyone thinks that generative AI just pushed the whole AI movement forward. And that was only 2 years ago. And that's clearly not the case. So I just want to very quickly give you a history, if you will, of artificial intelligence from the 1950s to now. And then after that, I just want to touch upon some brief keywords or buzzwords that you might already be hearing. And that's machine learning. What is that? What is large language models, the LLMs? What is generative AI? What is conversational AI? And then we'll go into some of the different roles that AI plays within all the different customer success functions. And then we'll talk about what are some of the AI tools that I use nowadays and what are some of the trends that I'm seeing. And then finally, I'll just give you some resources in case you guys want to go off and check out some podcasts or read some books or subscribe to newsletters, what have you. So that's a quick agenda for today. So hopefully that works. All righty. So introduction to AI. So like I mentioned in 1950, I don't know how many of you actually know about this guy called Alan Turing.
I think we've all seen
the
film.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
plus I have a crush on Benedict Cumberbatch, but that's neither.
Yes, exactly. For people not familiar with Alan Turing, he was this British scientist and mathematician from the 1950s. And for a lot of people, he's actually known as the father of the modern computer science industry. And back in the 50s, because he was working on all of these different systems and computers, and he was publishing papers, he made this one bold statement. And he basically asked people, can machines think? And the reason why this was a very provocative or bold statement for everyone was because the word thinking and the word intelligent behavior was only associated with humans at that point. So no one had actually thought about having a machine take over those behaviors, something that was very critical to just having humans be involved in. And so when he started to prove to people that, listen, what I'm trying to say is, if you put a machine and a human in a room, and in another room, you have a human ask the same questions to both the machine and this other human being, if the responses coming back from the machine is a lot better than the responses coming back from the human being, then that means that the machine is actually intelligent. And no one had actually thought about something like that. And that kind of became the basis of basically artificial intelligence being studied as an academic field. But then in the 1960s and 70s, the systems that were built were all rule-based systems. So that means is they operated on an if-then statement. So it was like something like, okay, if I wanted to go play, then go play, right? So it was a lot of if statements, you give it that, and then you get a response that's a then. So it was very restrictive in that method, but those were the systems that were built in the 60s and 70s. Then in the 1980s, the so-called expert systems came into play. And so expert systems are systems that were built for specific industries and for specific needs only. So for example, in medicine, you would have these systems come in that would mimic doctors and people within the medical industry. And the systems would be specific to whatever pain points they were addressing only. So they weren't actually being used as a generic system for all use cases. It was very specific to that niche, to that industry only. And so people were getting a little bored of that, right? Because there were all these other industries that could also potentially be helped by artificial intelligence, but unfortunately, there were no systems in place. So in the 2000s is when scientists started developing algorithms and systems that used machine learning. And we'll talk a little bit about that in the next slide. But basically what machine learning is, machines able to learn and mimic human behavior in order to adapt and do something, right? And so you've probably heard of this famous chess match between IBM's Deep Blue computer and Gary Kasparov. Yeah, so IBM Deep Blue, that was the very first machine that had machine learning in it, and you could see how well it did. And so that was the first success story, if you will, for these systems that used machine learning. And around this time too is when, like, I know I'm old here, but like the first Roomba, when it came out, everyone knows the Roomba. So that too was during this time. And so you had all these companies that used to put out ads and commercials on TV where they could actually get information from the consumer and have products and services be quote unquote personalized to that, right? So which kind of brings us to today. So today, the reason why generative AI is on everyone's lips and minds is because technology from the 1950s to now has evolved in the way that we already went through Web 2.0, which is the internet age. And then we have all these smartphones. Thanks to the iPhone, the companies are now collecting huge amounts of data from all of us, right, from the consumer. So now there's all of this data that's available for these AI systems to train on, to learn from, right, to be able to mimic what a human is going to be doing. And so huge amount of data is now available for training. And because of all of this data that's out there for these machines to be able to learn, there's now an increase in something called computational power. And that's basically how quickly is it that the machines can learn and give you back responses, right? So the technology is advanced now to where there's a lot of this computational power that's available, which again goes hand in hand with hardware and software systems, right? So you need to have these chips that will actually push this power out. And so you've heard of NVIDIA. It's now worth like $11 billion or something crazy like that.
My stock split yesterday. I was dancing. I was
Yes.
dancing yesterday. Totally stock split yesterday.
It's
keep going.
Yeah. And then you have Sam Altman going after the UAE looking for chip manufacturers and all that, because there's this need now for the hardware to be able to drive all of this demand. And they're also being, like Google is writing a specific software like TensorFlow software that only works with AI chips. So there have been all these improvements in hardware and software, which then leads us to an influx of all of these startup companies now. You're probably seeing those. Everyone's now into AI. They're bringing out AI products literally every day. There's thousands of companies coming out. And so investments into these companies is also growing, right? So there's heavy investment from VCs and other people. And so that's where we're at right now. So it's this gradual shift from Alan Turing's age to now, where there's all of this data, computational power, and amazing hardware, software, everything coming together in this day and age to be able to drive generative AI. So that's a very quick intro. So hopefully everyone is on the same page here.
And I know you may mention it, but the big announcement between OpenAI and Apple, that speaks volumes for the fact that it's not just startups that are recognizing the value of AI, but the partnership between two companies who theoretically were competitors, for lack of a better word. That's interesting. So I don't know if you're going to speak to that, but
OpenAI and Microsoft always had a really good relationship. In fact, if you go into ChatGPT and you have ChatGPT or a custom GPT, if you will, give it instructions to say, hey, put together a PowerPoint deck for me, and you give it some criteria, it'll easily put together a PowerPoint deck for you. But if you ask it, hey, can you give me an equivalent deck that works on a Mac or even like on a Chrome, it'll hiccup because those connections are not there yet. So yeah, so having OpenAI and Apple have these talks now, it's huge. But a majority of the people in the world, especially in the business world, they do use Microsoft. And so that's really good that at least the...
Sorry to keep interrupting. Because you are the host now, Michelle is trying to join in, and yes. I can't. If you don't mind. Sorry, Michelle. Yep. She has to let you in. I can't. Go ahead. Yes. I apologize.
No, I'm okay. Okay. So just very quickly, just wanted to talk about what is machine learning, all these buzzwords, right, that you keep hearing. So I found this really cool graphic on, I can't pronounce it, but I think it's Murek's website. And it shows, what are each of these subfields and how they all fit together inside artificial intelligence. So machine learning is the backbone, as you can see here, of a number of the AI systems, right? Including conversational AI. And even though you don't see generative AI here, it's basically around where you see the conversational AI bubble. That's where generative AI would sit as well. And machine learning is a method where computers actually learn from data. So what it is, you feed them many different examples, and what they do is they identify patterns, and then they're able to use those patterns to make predictions and to come up with responses that you're looking for. And so the more data you throw at them and you expose to them over time, the better it is that their performance is, right? So it's like teaching kids to recognize animals by showing them different like pictures of animals. So the more you do it, the more they recognize, right? It's like a dog or it's a cow or whatever it is. So that's how machine learning works. And then you have something specific within machine learning, and it's called the LLM. And this LLM is a type of machine learning model. And what you use it for is to generate large amounts of text and to be able to generate it using almost like human-like responses. And a perfect example of an LLM is ChatGPT and also chatbots. If you're in customer support and you're trying to think of, can I put together a chatbot? Then yes, a chatbot would be an LLM in that instance. And again, it's like giving a machine an all access pass to every single book, article, website information, right? And then you're basically letting it answer and give you help based on the questions that you're asking it, right? So that's LLM. And then generative AI and conversational AI. Like I said, generative AI's bubble would sit right here in the middle as well. The difference between generative AI and conversational AI is generative AI actually creates new content for you, right? So such as like text, images, and they're all actually based on the patterns or the learnings from the LLMs, right? So based on learned data patterns, they can actually generate things that don't exist. And so they're actually coming up with brand new context, right? Conversational AI, these are like your virtual assistants like Siri or Alexa. And what they do is they use something called natural language processing that humans use, right? It's natural, it's language that you and I converse in. And what they're trying to do is they're trying to imitate human behavior. And so that's why they mimic voices, for example, or they're able to understand commands. So it's all very much like a human, right? So that's basically the difference between conversational and generative AI. And then deep learning is another subset of machine learning. And that is basically, think of it as it trying to understand what's going on in your brain, right? So it's able to learn from large amounts of data, and it's simulating all the neural networks that are happening within your brain. And that's a very specialized field within ML. But for our purpose within customer success, all we need to really understand is what is an LLM? How does it fit within machine learning? And what's the difference between generative AI and conversational AI? So hopefully that makes sense. If you have any questions, let me know.
I had a question. I'm sorry, because somebody just sent me a message that I had to respond to. Could you go back to the deep, because this is one I don't think I've heard before. You said the deep AI.
Deep learning? Deep
Yeah,
learning?
deep learning. Yeah, if you don't mind, I apologize.
Yeah. So deep learning it's basically mimicking what's happening inside your brain, right? You have all these neural networks in your brain that's able to take in like bits and pieces of information with these electric pulses or whatever. So that's how it works, is it's able to mimic the brain. Basically, it's the brain. And it's able to take in all of these different patterns and things that the machine learning model has within it, and it's able to mimic a human being. So that's what's called deep learning.
Can you give me an example of how it's used in contemporary culture, or even how it's used for business?
Yeah, this is like very deep, like very, how should I say, low level sort of activity that you and I probably won't even see unless you're a data scientist or something like that. Like it's very like low level, like you don't have to worry about it. So that's why I say,
that's why.
as a customer success professional, really the only thing you probably want to know about is what's an LLM. You're exposed to ChatGPT and custom GPT. You probably want to know the difference between generative AI and conversational AI. Again, depending on the market that you're in, some tools, it's all conversations that they're mimicking. But then there are others where you're generating actual content like blogs or webinars or something like that, right? But they're all within the machine learning subfield. So that's all I want you to get out of this.
So conversation, would that be more like from the film Her?
Yes, exactly.
Okay, that's
Yes.
Her. And then generative, because you
Generative
said
AI is, generative AI is, hey, throwing in an instruction in ChatGPT and telling it, hey, create a framework for me for a blog article that I want to write. And then the response that it gives back to you, that's generative AI.
Okay,
right?
that
So
makes sense. Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah.
And
Michelle, were you going to ask a question?
Oh,
go ahead, Betsy. I'm sorry.
I was just making a statement and remarking about your deep learning situation, right? That's the stuff that is the state of the art, cutting edge, right? Eventually, that stuff works itself into some kind of commercial human type application.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right?
Yeah, so exactly. It's basically manipulating what's happening in the brain, right? So when we're talking about personalized communication, right? Like the ads that we see right now, like on Facebook or Siri or Alexa, it overhears our conversation with someone. And next thing you know, you're on your phone and then the ads are just all about the stuff that you were talking about before. It's stuff like that, right? It's like predicting what is it that this person is going to want to know about and see, based on it understanding how the brain works.
It does. I think it does, like robots.
It's robots, but it's still like very low level right now. Like it's not on the peripheral where I don't think you and I are still at the stage where we can actually interact with it on a daily basis.
I see the difference. Okay, that, because no, go ahead.
Yeah, within customer success, deep learning is not something that we need to care about right now. Maybe in the future, but not right now.
No, but to your point, the predictive analytics are there because, for just as a personal example, like last night I was watching a video, I saw something in the video that I found interesting, and I started to just like type in one or two like letters, and it literally, the entire word for what I was looking up came up. And it wasn't something that was very common. So it was pulling what I was watching on like a YouTube video. It could tell what I was watching, even though I went from like the YouTube video to Safari to look this up. That's that analytics is a little bit frightening.
Yeah.
And I'm not really sure where that falls into this category.
That's more generative kind of stuff.
Right. That's still generative AI. That's still not.
Okay. Okay. All right. Keep going. Sorry. But I think Betsy had a question. I want to make sure that, Betsy, you had a question.
Yeah, I was just going to ask, like, what platforms are being used for these, like, generative AI? That's like paid level, like ChatGPT 4, right?
Yeah, so I'm coming to that. That's actually
okay.
She got it teed up, Betsy. She got it teed up. Yes. Thank you. I hope the questions are okay, Divya. I told them to go ahead. Oh, there you go.
Yes, please do. Yeah, just quickly wanted to talk about AI tools and trends, right? Great question, Betsy. One of the things that I wanted to quickly talk about is, what does it mean by embedded AI versus native AI, right? Embedded AI is basically all the different AI features that you might get with the tools that you already have in your tech stack, right? Like, for example, Microsoft, you're using, let's say, Microsoft products every single day, but then Microsoft just released Copilot, right? So that's like your AI, but within the tech stack that you already own. But Microsoft as a company is not an AI company. It's just a company that produces or has all of these different products for productivity, what have you, business use cases, but it's not a native AI company. So what a native AI company is, it's a company where it's an AI first company. So like an OpenAI, for example, or like a Perplexity, right? These are companies that are just solely known for their AI, right? So that's the difference between embedded AI and native AI. So on the right, I know this picture is a little muddled. You can't really see it very clearly. But the point I was trying to make with this image here is that every single day, there are all of these companies, embedded AI, also native AI companies that are pushing all of these AI tools onto us. And it gets super duper overwhelming for every single one of us to go, oh my God, we're so far behind in trying to figure out AI. So what I wanted to say in this slide is, sure, there are hundreds of companies coming up every single day with AI products, but I want to make sure that everyone understands that there's not a single person that is a true expert in AI, especially in customer success. So even if people say that they're experts in customer success using AI, that's probably not the case, because not everyone is at the moment. Everyone's still learning and going with it. So please don't be overwhelmed by seeing images like this that pop up in newsletters and things like that, because that's really not the case. The second is, when we were talking about ChatGPT and Custom GPT, you have Gemini, you have Copilot, you have all of these, you have Claude 3, you have Llama, you have all of these AI applications that are coming out from different companies. In my opinion, ChatGPT is still the best, just because it's been tried over and over again by a lot of people. And sure, it's got its limitations, but from comparing it to everything else, it's still really good. It's a really good AI system to start playing with. The cool thing about OpenAI is, I'm not sure if people know, but ChatGPT 4, that was a paid version, is now a free version called ChatGPT 4.0. And O, by the way, stands for Omni, 4.0, and it's available to everyone. When people are overwhelmed and they're like, oh my gosh, we don't know where to start, I always tell them, always try to get a free account. And the best way to do that is to just go to the OpenAI website and sign up to get ChatGPT 4.0. And with 4.0, you can pretty much do anything and everything. So start playing. And then the third thing that I want to tell people is, if you're not really sure how you want to apply ChatGPT or anything like that to your work, forget about that for a while. Start playing with it with some personal use cases that you can think of, right? So what I typically do for my personal use is, a lot of times, especially on a Friday, I have no clue what the heck I should be making for dinner at home. My kids are super picky with things. Half the time, my refrigerator is empty, because especially now with summer break, they're going through things all the time. And so I basically tell it, okay, these are all the ingredients that I have in my refrigerator, and come up with 3 recipes. It shouldn't be a salad, because they don't like salads. And give me detailed instructions on how to make this dish, and boom, it'll do that for me. And to be honest, like about 9 out of 10 times, those recipes are really tasty. So I would highly recommend you guys do that too. But the point is, always start with something that you have a personal, right, connection with. And then you can start thinking about how to use it for work. The other big thing right now is when it comes to privacy and company data. You hear about ChatGPT going through hallucinations, and the fact that even though instructions that you provided saying, don't give out this piece of data or these instructions out to anybody, there are always these people that can quote unquote hack and somehow have the ChatGPT give them responses back that basically gives them all the information about every company. So right now, what I'm trying to say is, if you have any sensitive data or data that includes privacy, around privacy concerns, please don't put that into any sort of LLM, because that's how they learn, and you don't want them to actually have information like that on there. Which then leads me to the trends that I'm seeing, right? So we were talking earlier about personalization. So I feel like in the next 5 to 10 years, there's going to be this hyper growth when it comes to personalized connections, right? And for the AI to really understand what it is that you want, and to be able to give you things that you hadn't even thought of as an option for things. So personalized communication and interaction is going to be a huge thing. The other thing too has to revolve around biases. We want to make sure that AIs avoid biases and hallucinations, and even like we were just talking about with privacy concerns, to have it be so that they're robust enough to where they won't give out information that they have on hand. So these are all the trends that I see now. It's brand new technology still. There's still a lot of holes, but there's still a lot of potential when it comes to that. And really, at the end of the day, we still have to keep in mind that as humans, we're still the drivers. Like I think of AI as a little partner, like an assistant helping me do things, but ultimately I'm still the one that decides whether or not I want to use that information, or is that information worthwhile to have, right? So I'm still in control over whatever it is that it's putting out there. Hopefully that sort of makes sense. But yeah, start with the ChatGPT 4.0 account if you don't have one already, and just start playing with it. Give it some, come up with a workout routine for me. Like I only have 5-pound dumbbells. What can I do with 5-pound dumbbells? And you'll see all of these things that it comes up with. So start playing with that.
Thank you for that, Divya. I think for me, because it converted me to 4.0, because I already had it, and it just automatically, but where I use it a lot is I love to write, but I write poorly. And so I throw it in and I go, please improve this. And it does a pretty good job of just enhancing what I write. And I think it has learned, because I've noticed when I first started using it, I would say it was pretty clunky and it was very formal. But now I think and maybe this is just my imagination, but I feel like it's learned the way that I speak, so that now, to a certain percent, I can use about 90% of what it provides for me, versus before I was probably only using about 20 to 30. But what I would encourage people, if they're not using it, to start there. I love the idea of recipe or cream, but that to me was where I started initially, and then I've just evolved from there. I'd be curious if anybody else, Grace, I see that you went off mute. Did you want to say something?
I was just going to say that I found in terms of writing, like I've been trying out in my job search journey, trying out different generated texts and ChatGPT. I don't have the 4.0, so I'm definitely, I'm glad you told me about that.
You should already have 4.0.
Yeah, they would have converted you.
Would have converted.
Yeah, if you already had the paid plan before they offered 4.0, then I think by default you'll still be in GPT-4. And then if you go to the very top, there's like a drop down, and then you can select 4.0 from there. But if you've never had an account before with them, or let's say that you had the free account, the 3.5, then automatically you would have jumped to 4.0 as your default.
No wonder it just got suddenly better.
That's what it is, yeah.
But I was trying out different like generated texts for like job applications. Sometimes you have to like answer questions. And I found that Gemini, or Gemini, depending on how you pronounce it, generates a little bit more informal, more like natural language. But I find that the information, if I'm looking at like information, I find that ChatGPT has more solid information. So I usually do like a combination of those.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. If I want any sort of AI to, let's say, read a very large amount of data, right? Let's say I'm recording, for right now, we're recording this session, and let's say you want to summarize what's happened in this session. Then what I personally use is not ChatGPT or a custom GPT for that. I'll actually use Perplexity, because Perplexity's LLM actually is able to give you like the best summary when it comes to just evaluating large amounts of text, right? ChatGPT, what I've found is it all comes down to the instructions that you're providing it. The more concrete and the more direct you are, then it'll learn and it'll give you the response that you're looking for. But if you're very vague and general, then it has no concept of where is it that you're coming from. So it's almost like teaching a child or somebody that has never used something like this before, and they're just coming on the job for the very first time. Like, how would you actually train them, right? You have to think of it like that. And then basically tell them, okay, you have to open an Excel sheet. You have to open this tabs called blah, blah, blah. And within this tab, you have to find blah, blah, blah. And if you find it, then do this, right? All of these different steps is what you have to be super, super clear with when it comes to ChatGPT. And so that's why like the framework and the instructions that you give it is very important. Versus with Perplexity, it's not actually something that, like, I wouldn't actually use it as an assistant. It's more of, okay, summarize this large piece of data, tell me the 5 key points that I need to get out of this, right? Or like you push in like a job description and you're like, okay, what are the 5 keywords that keep coming up in this job description, and rank them from the most important to the least important, right? That would be something that Perplexity can do. So yeah, so right now it's just play with it. But the point is that try to get like a free account and start using it.
And can I add to that? Because I saw a post, and this was probably a few months ago, that gave instructions on how to build prompts, because what you're talking about, the instructions, the technical term, right, is a prompt. And it was specifically geared towards CS. And it said, and I know you're going to talk about this in the next few slides, it said, this is the prompt you should use on how to build out an onboarding framework, or this is the prompt you need to be on how to teach your CSMs how to do upsells and cross sells. So it was the instructions that they said, and it specifically, I'll try to see if I can find that, guys, and post it in the group, but it showed you how to build out those prompts that were specific to CS.
Yeah, so I actually did a success hour session with Jan, like back in February.
Maybe it was your post that I saw then.
Yeah, all about custom GPTs. And I did
Okay.
provide a prompt at that session. You can take a look at it and let me know if
I would love to see that.
Yeah,
I'll try to find it. It's under Jan's, so I can be able to find it. Okay, all right, I'll look for that then. That's perfect. That's exactly what I was saying. Okay.
I just FYI, I just saved off one this morning on the job search stuff. So I'll send it out to everybody too. I'll send it out on our Slack channel.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you for that, Michelle. Anything else on this? This is really helpful. Thank you so much, Divya.
Yeah, of course. All right. Okay. So this is what we're here for today, right? Role of AI in customer success. We just talked about how LLMs pushing customer information, like sensitive information or anything regarding privacy to the LLMs is probably not a great idea. But us within customer success, regardless of the function that we're in, be it CS leaders to CSMs, renewal managers, what have you, the very first line that I have here, it's about leveraging technology to predict, personalize, and improve the customer experience. That's what we're going for, right? On like pretty much every single day. And so for me, what I always tell people, and if they haven't already done this in their organizations, is to always start with the customer journey map. Because once you have all the different pain points laid out on a map, then you can figure out how each one of your teams and functions plays a role inside this journey map, right? To try to get the customers the value it is that they're looking for with your product and services. So for example, the map that I typically create in the companies that I've worked in have these 6 different stages in them. Now, every single map is different, but this is just an example of what I typically do. Oh, by the way, shameless plug, I do have a blog out on this company's website called Zapscale that talks all about customer journey maps and what kinds of tools you can use within AI to actually get this thing up and running. So if you're interested in learning more about that, feel free. But these are the 6 stages that I cover in that blog as well, right? So you have the evaluation stage where you have this prospective buyer that's considering purchasing a product. Your product onboarding. So now this buyer is now a customer, is about to start using a product. Adoption, where they're finished the onboarding process and they're now using the products pretty much daily, hopefully, and trying to get value out of that. And then you have renewal, and then you have expansion, and then finally advocacy, right? So for each one of these stages, how would you typically use artificial intelligence or AI? So like the evaluation stage is typically something that you would work with sales, right? CS is not like heavily involved in the evaluation process. However, if you're in a pre-seed or a series A, sometimes you might get involved as a CSM or even an onboarding specialist within the sales process to help them close this account, right? So while this buyer is considering purchasing your product, the idea is to basically streamline the process for them. So sometimes what happens is, and I have this written down here, there's so many different tools that you can use. For example, you can use ChatGPT. You can have an assistant or a chatbot created on your website that will answer any and all questions that your potential buyer or your potential customer will have about that, right? And so even if your support agents are not available, you can still have this bot run 24 hours a day because that's what they do, right? And if you're able to feed it information from your company, so that it's able to answer any kind of questions that might come to it, then it's basically taking the role of a support agent, right? And so that's one way that you can actually help the sales team have these buyers be potential customers, is to actually have chatbots be available. One of the things that I'm actually working on as a side project is I'm actually using Zapier right now to create my own chatbot using ChatGPT as well, right? So I have all these instructions created within ChatGPT as far as responses are concerned, and then I'm actually feeding all of that information into my own chatbot. And so again, that's something that you can do. And again, don't use any sensitive data, right? And so once the evaluation phase happens, typically then the customer success team takes over, and you're talking about the sales to CS handover process, right? So have it again be automated to where the sales guys are actually filling this out on the fly, and having that be part of your CRM process to where that information is flowing into your CRM. And so if, again, you have the same system set up in your CRM, regardless of what the account is, and you have specific fields already laid out within your CRM, then this piece of information can easily be fed into the CRM, right? And one of the ways you can do that if you're using Zapier is to actually use Zapier tables, where it can actually take out information piece by piece and have it be populated within the CRM itself. So there's that way, like you can definitely do it that way as well. And then when it comes to onboarding, now you're looking at customer segmentation, right? Like what I've done before, this is where you need to figure out who your low touch customers are and your high touch customers are. You want to make sure that your knowledge base is up to par, right? So if you are going low touch, then do you have all the different articles? Do you have all the different webinars and everything that the customer needs in order to onboard themselves? Do you already have that? And if you do, then you can use ChatGPT to create a onboarding email with all the different links to the various webinars and the knowledge base articles. And then you can send that to another GPT that can actually create an email for you. And you can feed that through a Zapier and have it be connected to your Gmail, for example, and then just create the email draft for you. All you have to do as a onboarding specialist then is to make sure that the data is correct and you're just hitting the send button, right? So these are all the things that you can easily do. Even now with the free account that you have, start playing with it, right? Like the ChatGPT 4.0, I also have a free account on Zapier. It's super easy to create these workflows and have ChatGPT create the email, connect the two systems together, and you'll see a draft email come up in your inbox. And it's just easy for you to use automation and AI that way, right? So that's just one example of getting like your low touch onboarding happening. And then at the same time, you want to start creating your success plans, right? So now you have the company information and you already know the value. What is it that they're trying to get out of your product and service? Create these success plans. Same thing. If you already have a template, it's just a matter of ChatGPT populating that template, right? So that kind of takes onboarding to a whole new level. And then when it comes to adoption, this is where the bulk of a CSM's activities is happening, right? Because now you're evaluating customer health, you're constantly making phone calls, you're setting up QBR reviews, right? And all kinds of things like the decks that you're preparing for the QBRs. You can use ChatGPT for that as well. But just keep in mind, again, you don't want to feed in customer sensitive data anywhere. And so for things like customer support, having that be automated, having QBR decks created, these are things that are very quote unquote generic that you could probably have an AI or an automation workflow do that for you. But when it comes to analyzing customer health, I think it's not 100% there just because you can't feed in a whole lot of sensitive data. So there's still a lot of manual work, in my opinion, that's happening. And you still have to use your own judgment as far as analyzing graphs and data is concerned. Having said that, GPT 4.0 now, you're able to now upload like a Google Sheets, and it can actually give you a trend or you can actually zoom in on a particular part of a graph, and it can actually give you insights on that as well. So that's super cool. I haven't played with it yet. That's something that can help you make some decisions, I think. So that's your adoption. And renewal wise, same thing. If you want to have renewal discussions and you're looking at past history of the customer, you can easily pull all of that information from the CRM, from any of your other systems that you're using, right? And have it be in an Excel sheet. Like I said, with Microsoft, it's super easy. And I know that they're doing things with Google and with Apple as well. So hopefully those integrations are coming out soon. But you can easily create graphs and things like that and have ChatGPT, same thing, like zoom in on a particular area and give you more insights into that. And then for advocacy, personally, I haven't used AI and automation for advocacy reasons, only because the way that advocacy works, I'm sure you're familiar with it. You're taking both quantitative and qualitative data together, and you're basically figuring out which of the customers are good to have customers, right? Who are the ones that will actually go out there on behalf of our company, say good things, and bring in new business for us. Personally, I haven't done that myself. So I don't actually know of any really good tools. Although in my blog, I did find, by doing some different, let me see, some research, there is a tool apparently called Influitive. I've never heard of that before, but apparently it's a really good one, and it's used by a number of companies just to do advocacy work. So I'm not sure how that integrates with the existing tech stack and if it looks at both qualitative and quantitative data, but maybe that's something that you can work with like your ops team or your IT team and figure out if that'll help or not. But yeah, so those are just some ways that I think within CS you can start looking at stuff. Because I mentioned customer data is very sensitive. Right now, a lot of the companies are using AI and automation for their internal processes and workflows just because they don't have any customer sensitive data in them. And also for customer support, right? Like you can actually put together emails by reading customer sentiment in questions like tickets, and you can pull in links to various knowledge base articles or webinars and things like that that you can include automatically in your response. You can have chatbots be available anytime, right? 24/7 to answer questions. So things like that. Those are where I'm actually seeing a lot more AI stuff being used. And then, of course, personalization and predictive analysis, that's coming up. It's not huge at the moment, again, because it needs a lot of company sensitive data, but it is happening. So hopefully there's a bigger push to do all of that in the next few years.
I just had a question because I know we're almost out of time, but this is something that I get, at least in my interviews, in these scenarios where we're going to be bringing in AI. You mentioned that this tool works best when you have the customer data, when you have the artifacts and the collateral that you need. But for a startup, to your point, oftentimes they do not. So what I get from leaders is, how can you build something out like this from scratch where you don't have that? Do you have a succinct, because I'm sure you're getting a similar question when you're being interviewed as well.
Yeah. I pretty much tell them what I just mentioned is, know, just look at what it is that you can do with the information that you have, right? The biggest thing is, like for me, in the companies that I've worked in, the CRM is always the biggest tool that has every single information that's in there, right? But for that information to reside in the CRM, does that mean that sales is actually putting that information in there, right? Like it all kind of comes back to, right, to the top again. It doesn't
garbage
matter.
in, garbage out.
Exactly. You don't have that information, that's really hard to, right? And most of the time, the noise in the data that you, the information, the data that you get is all noise. There's literally like 10%, 20% of the data that actually makes sense that you're going to use. The rest of it is all noise. But you need to have like really good data. And for that, start building from there first, right? Forget about tools. Like get the data where the data should be, so you have the information to actually have these tools use and analyze and all of that stuff.
Okay, yeah, no, I knew that you were going to say that, but I just wanted to make sure because
Yeah.
you know, we've both done enough blogging and podcasts about
Yeah.
data integrity,
Yes.
data hygiene, data.
Yes,
Okay.
exactly.
All right. I know we're almost out of time.
Yeah. So just very quickly, so this was just a cool quote that I saw right through Custify that 6% of the companies that invest in onboarding content after purchase remain loyal. That's pretty huge, right? So again, reason is onboarding is super important. And within onboarding, even before adoption, there's customer data there, but it's not sensitive data. So again, another area in customer success that you could probably do a lot of automation and use of AI in is probably onboarding. So these are the resources that I wanted to share with everyone. And these are things that I prescribe to or subscribe to. So like newsletters, I'm sure you've heard of all of these, but there's one that's called The Neuron. They also have a podcast. It's fantastic. I would highly recommend it. Superhuman AI, that's another one, really good one. Then there's AI Advantage, and then deeplearning.ai. This is where all the gurus within artificial intelligence have their like webinars. And if you want to go super deep into learning coding or no coding even, this is the platform for that. And then podcasts, AI for GTM. This is something that somebody from another community that I belong to called Pavilion, he actually hosts AI for GTM, which is really awesome. He has CROs, CMOs, a bunch of people come on and they all talk about AI. It's really great. And then Lex Friedman, I don't know if you guys know about Lex, but he's one of the best dudes. He has all kinds of guests on his show, and it's really fun. And it's really amazing. So I would highly recommend catching like his podcast with Sam Altman was really awesome before OpenAI released 4.0. And then there's Last Week in AI and then the Daily AI Show. I think the Daily AI Show is probably like a LinkedIn podcast, if you will. So if you follow them on LinkedIn, I think you get like updates or notifications. People to follow on LinkedIn, there's some guy, okay, this guy, Kyle Shannon, he actually has his own community called AI Salon. So if you want to belong to that, it's really great. They have like a bunch of people come on talking about professional projects and things. And these are some of the other people that are just strictly talking about AI. Communities, as I mentioned, AI Salon, AI for customer success, and there's a LinkedIn page called Generative AI. I don't know if you guys follow that, but it's got some cool stuff there. And also, if there's any articles that you're reading that you want to just comment on or start a post on LinkedIn, this is a really good place to do that. And then if you're interested in getting like free certifications, there's a bunch on Google, Microsoft, and even LinkedIn. I love all the Google ones. In fact, I have one that it's probably an old one, Introduction to Generative AI and Machine Learning or something like that. So it's a really good resource. So hopefully this is enough for you guys to get started. It's overwhelming, but please don't feel like you need to be an expert overnight because nobody.
Great.
I'm telling you right now.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Awesome.
Yeah. So finally, don't use AI for every task, right? Use the right tool at the right time. Don't put sensitive data. And we are still in charge, guys. AI, they might replace a couple things that we're doing, but ultimately it all comes down to humans still. So don't worry about AI taking your job away. So
I heard an amazing quote the other day. It said that AI won't take your job, but someone who knows AI will.
yes, exactly.
Same sentiment.
Exactly.
So yes.
But humans are still at the forefront of everything. But I'd love to connect with you on LinkedIn. So if there are any questions or anything, I'd love to help you guys. But if there's anything that didn't make sense or something that I told you incorrectly, please correct me and let me know what you guys are working on too. I'd love to learn and whenever I can. So
This
Thank
was
you.
amazing.